War breaks out between the Federation and the Klingons, and a small primitive world known as Organia gets caught in the middle. Kirk and Spock need to negotiate with the Organians to get a base there, or at the very least stop the Klingons from conquering the place and enslaving their people. But there's something about the peace-loving Organians that don't add up. Kirk and Spock have to juggle resisting the Klingon occupation with trying to figure out what is up with these Organians as they go on an errand of mercy. Hit it.
Hey!
Major guest stars this week. First, playing Organian Council leader Aelborn is John Abbott. 168 lines on this guy's resume, including guest spots on the usual cop and cowboy shows, some sci-fi with appearances in Lost in Space and Land of the Giants, and a decent amount of comedy, showing up in the Beverly Hillbillies, Get Smart, the Jim Backus Show, and 1983's mega stinker, Slapstick of Another Kind. Of which Gene Siskel said the best thing that could happen to that movie would be that it not be shown anywhere ever. Woof. The next guy needs wrestling entrance music. Playing Klingon Commander Kor is John Colicos. A classically trained Shakespearean actor from Toronto, Johnny C. was in all kinds of stuff. Westerns, thrillers, voice work, including Apocalypse in the X-Men animated series. But if you're watching this show, and you know this guy for one other credit besides Commander Kor, smart money is on his role in the original Battlestar Galactica, Count Baltar. This guy was a singular talent, and we'll talk more about his performance later on. But right now, let's get into the plot. We open with the Enterprise cruising along when Kirk walks onto the bridge and Spock hands him a coded message from Starfleet. Kirk puts it into his Captain Midnight decoder box and reads it. Negotiations with somebody called the Klingon Empire have broken down and we're probably about to start shooting. So, hold on to your butts. Also, speaking of your butts, get them over to Organia and see if you can get them to let us have a base there. And if so, great. If not, at least don't let these Klingon Mamalukes have one either. Spock thinks it's a good plan. Organia is strategically placed between the Federation and the Klingons. Kirk asks about the Organians, and Spock says they're nice folks when you get to know them. Not much by way of tech or nothing like that. Very much a goats and chickens kind of place. The Prime Directive knocks on the door, but Kirk says to pretend we're not home. Kirk compares Organia to Armenia, weak and innocent and stuck between two bigger states who decide to fight each other. People in that situation tend to get wiped out, no matter who wins. Speaking of fighting, Sulu gets a sensor contact, and before he can identify it, the ship gets hit with some pew-pew. Kirk orders Sulu to return fire. A little back and forth, and the bandit goes straight to Splody Town. Uhura reports that she's gotten a fleet-wide alert from Starfleet, and it's Code 1. Now, that usually means something really good or something really bad. Nobody uses 1 to mean, it's fine, Well, Kirk lets us know it's the bad one. War. Everybody's pretty bummed about it, but they still gotta do the thing. So Kirk orders Warp Factor 7 to Organia, and it's time for the opening credits. When we come back, we're in orbit around Organia, and Kirk and Spock prepare to talk to these Organians about that base, no Klingons, and Kirk tells Sulu he's in command. If some Klingons show up and there's a chance you can't take them, then haul ass and get some buddies before you come back and pick us up. He's on it. Kirk and Spock beam down to a Renaissance fair, and nobody freaks out that 2 dudes in space duds just appeared next to the beer tent. Suddenly, a dude in a smock shows up and greets our boys. Says his name's Aelborn. Kirk intros himself and Spock, both of whom awkwardly try to emulate the Organian "hey, how's it going" gesture. It's nice they tried, though, I guess. Aelborn offers to take them to the council chambers. These places always have councils, have you noticed that? Anyways, on the way there, Spock says he wants to look around the Renaissance fair, maybe pick up some cinnamon honey or a turkey leg, see if the glassblower can do a say-lot. Aelborn hands him a free kiss card and sends him on his way. In the council room, Kirk states the situation. The Klingons are coming, and he's there to stop them from taking over Organia and using it as a base, and maybe seeing about getting them to let him have a base instead. Aelborn says, so we have a choice, you or these Klingon peoples. And Kirk says, no, with the Klingons, there ain't no choice. They'll take over, they'll put your people in labor camps, they'll kill people indiscriminately, they'll make it so you can only listen to Dostoevsky audiobooks read by Carol Channing, all kinds of nasty stuff. But no matter how he tries to ensure these old dudes that the Federation can protect the Organians from these crazy Klingon people, they insist that they don't need protection. Though they do mention that they're worried about the captain and really wish he would go back to his ship and stop talking about how they're all going to have to watch all 9 Paul Blart movies if the Klingons take over. Kirk makes one more attempt and they say they'll excuse themselves and talk it over if it'll get him to shut up. As they're huddled up, Spock comes in and says, hey look, they had a beer stein with my family crest on it. Also, I can't find any evidence that these people are progressing at all technologically. Looks like they've been at this level for tens of thousands of years, totally stagnant. Kirk uses this to make another offer. We can give you medicines, show you how to corn and how to wheat. Your karaoke technology is unsuited to the needs of your people. We can help you with that too. Just let us set up a base, huh? What do you say? As Aelborn is starting to bang his head on the desk because this putz can't seem to take a hint, Sulu calls and tells him that a buttload of Klingons has just showed up in orbit and are lighting the Enterprise up like a Christmas tree. Kirk tells him to beat feet and come back with more ships. He takes off, but that means that Kirk and Spock are now on their own. As Kirk starts to tell the Council the news, the old dude on Aelborn's left says that a bunch of Klingons just showed up in orbit and they're beaming down. Spock hits the tricorder and can't seem to be able to confirm this. Dude then says that several hundred Klingons are in town now and armed to the teeth. Kirk is like, what the hell is with this guy? How does he know that crap? We find out that this guy's named Trefane, and that's just a thing he does, apparently. When we come back from an Ovaltine commercial, we get our first look at the Klingons. They're dressed in black and gold sparkly pants, black Steve Jobs shirts, and gold sweater vests. Principal Klingons have brown-green foundation and eccentric eyebrows and goatees, while extra Klingons just kind of look like they were standing too close to an Acme bomb when it blew up. They're all wearing cross-drawed disruptor pistols that they got from the same place Amini 7 gets theirs, but these have way cooler nozzles on them. And these guys are all over the Ren Fair. Good luck getting any mead now, right? Kirk and Spock are now sporting local fashion, hoping the Klingons don't figure out that they're Federation. But Spock discovers a problem with their new pants. There ain't no phasers in the pocket like their old pants had. Kirk asks Aelborn what gives, and he says, sorry, these are peace pants. No pew-pew in peace pants. And speaking of your new duds, while the captain can pass as an Organian, because this is the era when most alien races are just humans in period costumes or cone-shaped hats or whatever, Spock is rather undeniably a Vulcan. One of the other council members says, maybe he's a Vulcan here selling stuff. Spock says, well, Vulcan merchants are pretty common, so that works. Kirk is still worried that the Organians are going to get wiped out, but Aelborn insists that ain't going to happen. Kirk is like, sheesh, what is with you guys? Just then, 2 Klingon guards walk in, and after them, strutting like a boss, is Klingon Commander Kor. He announces that he's in charge and asks who the hell the one guy in the room that ain't old and don't got a shit-eating grin on his face is. Aelborn introduces the captain as Barona, Organian nice guy. Then Kor wants to know what gives with the Vulcan. Spock says he's here selling Dwarves Do It With Hammers t-shirts at the Ren Fair. Kor ain't buying it, though. Vulcans are members of the Federation, so he tells his guard to take him away and have his brain scanned. Kirk speaks up in Spock's defense, and Kor seems impressed that one of the Organians is actually showing a little backbone. Kor tells the council once again that he's in charge and he's got some regulations everybody needs to follow. You break one, we blow you up. Pretty simple. Now, he needs an Organian as a liaison, and since Barona here is the only actually interesting Organian in the vicinity, he'll take that one. Oh, and one more thing. If any Klingon gets killed here, I'm gonna blow up 1,000 Organians, okay? Okay. You guys take the Vulcan to get brain scanned. Barona, you're with me. Kirk flashes a very sarcastic Organian hand thing at the council and leaves. In Kor's new office, he reads out a list of rules and regulations to Kirk/Barona. If you've ever been a part of an HOA, this is all pretty standard stuff. Kor asks Kirk what he thinks of the rules, and just as Kirk is about to ruminate on how effective the big piece of paper with the rules on it would be as a Klingon suppository, a henchman comes in with Spock. Says he checks out, no pretense, he sells the stupid shirts, and is worried about the economy. Apparently the guy used Force 4, so, that's solid, right? Kor seems satisfied, and he asks if Kirk would like to try getting his noggin probed. Kirk asks about that, and Kor says it's a mind sifter. And depending on how high they crank the dial, they can record every single bit of knowledge a dude has in his brain. But if they go that high, it tends to leave the dude without a brain. Wanna try? Kirk declines and asks Spock if he's okay. Spock is like, well, I find that I dig Linkin Park a little more than I did before, but otherwise, I'm fine. Kor dismisses them both, but warns Kirk that if the Organians get rowdy, that's his ass. I don't think that'll be a problem. Kirk and Spock are walking through the Ren Fair, and they bump into a Klingon leaving the Dead Bob show. The Klingon is a dick to Kirk, and Spock has to step in before Kirk goes full-blown rage monster and makes their apologies to the Klingon. As they continue on, Kirk maintains that the Organians really want to blow up Klingons. They just don't know it yet. So why don't we show them how fun it is by blowing something up? They'll love it. Spock says he's down. That night, the boys go sneaking around, trying to blow up a munitions dump. They knock out a Klingon guard and make it to what looks like a stack of Christmas presents. Spock finds a sonic grenade with a delayed action fuse and, for some reason, sets it to only 6 seconds, and the pair hauls ass. They don't get very far, but apparently it's enough, and
Bada-boom.
The only 2 non-Klingons in the area stand up nonchalantly and go, wow, that blowed up really good. We cut away before they high-five each other. Jump cut to the council chambers, and Kirk is getting disapproved of by the Organians. Evidently, Kirk and Spock's demonstration on how to resist an occupation is not appreciated by the old dudes. Aelborn says, apparently, you're not getting our whole non-violence thing. Blowing stuff up? That's violence. Kirk just about loses his mind going, no, I really don't get it. As he's admonishing the Organians, talking about from time to time you gotta water the Tree of Liberty with some freshly squeezed Klingon, the world's most obvious bug is shown, and we see that Kor is listening to all of this in his office. Kor and some guards bust into the council room and tell everybody the gig is up. He knows what Kirk and Spock did, but he has his harshest words for the old dudes, almost defending what our boys did, respecting that they were brave enough to fight back. Aelborn wants to know what Kor's going to do with Barona, and when Kor replies that he's going to be executed after getting his mind renovated, Aelborn says no need, that's Captain James T. Kirk of the Federation, and his buddy there is his first officer. Kirk is now almost on the Klingon side, at least where the Organians are concerned. He is dumbfounded at the level of almost nonchalant betrayal that just happened. But when Kor finds out who it is he's got right in front of him, he almost geeks out. He's apparently heard of the captain and says it sucks that this is how things have shaken out because he's wanted to meet him in battle. Once again, Kor saves his harshest words for the Organian Council, decrying their betrayal of the captain. This time, Kirk joins in, basically calling the council a big old geriatric bag of butts. Kor is like, I know, right? These guys are totally the worst. Kor orders Spock locked up and Kirk taken to his office. In Kor's office, it's clear that Kor has been watching this show because he recites the conversation with the Non-7 from Armageddon almost verbatim, talking about we're so alike and we're both predators, hunters, killers, and all this. Then Kor wants information about Starfleet movements, bases, that kind of thing. Kirk tells him to pound sand. Kor says, yeah, it's fine. We'll just stick you in the brain scrambler, and I guess your buddy has some kind of power he used to block it, so we gotta see how that happened. So I guess we gotta take him apart. Or, you could just tell me what I'm gonna find out anyway, and we don't gotta do all that. I'll let you think that over for 12 hours, okay? Some guards throw Kirk in yet another torchlit castle dungeon type place. Everybody and their mother's got a friggin' dungeon around here. Cross dissolve, and it's 6 hours into the 12-hour deadline. Kirk and Spock are discussing how they're gonna escape and what they're gonna blow up once they do. Suddenly, the door to their cell opens up, and friggin' Aelborn strolls in and is like, well, stop looking at me like that and come on, I'm rescuing your violent asses. Well, Airborne takes them to the council chambers, and it's not a couple of seconds before Core is being alerted to their escape. As Kirk is demanded to know what the hell is going on, Core makes an announcement over the PA system. He says that he better get the 2 Federation people back or he's going to kill 200 Organians every 2 hours until he does. And he's starting right now. Then the sound of Klingon pew-pew rings out. Kirk and Spock decide they've got to do something in the next 2 hours or turn themselves in. They're not going to be the reason 200 more Organians get the zap. Kirk demands their phasers from Airborne, who resists, but Trefane says, "Oh, let this jackass have his shooty box." Airborne says, "All right, they're over in the entertainment center." Spock grabs them and their communicators, but weirdly leaves his tricorder in there. Kirk and Spock leave the chambers and the council talks about how noble they were, but also stupid. Airborne asks Trefane what's going to happen, and he says it's going to suck bad. Airborne says, "Well, I guess we got to stop it." In a day-for-night scene, Kirk and Spock raid Core's headquarters. They stun some guards and rush into the building. Back in the council chambers, the Matlock Tribunal over here is sensing what our boys are doing, and Airborne tells them to, quote, prepare themselves. Okay. We'll cut back to Klingon Command, and Core is pissed that nobody's turning in Spock and the captain, despite greasing the 200 people. He tells his buddy to round up 200 more, and as the guy is heading out to do just that, Kirk uses his rope belt and garrots the guy, but he don't kill him. He gets Core's office location out of him, which is weird since he's already been there twice, and the fact that he's supposed to round up more people to whack, and then Spock nerve pinches him. They bust into Core's office and find him alone. They hold him at phaser point, and he reveals that there's a Federation fleet on its way, and the Klingon fleet is ready for him. Also that there's another one of those hidden bugs with the really bright-ass light on it in his office. Just then, 4 Klingons bust in, and the fight is on. Except, all of a sudden, all the phasers and Klingon disruptors get really hot and they all drop them. And then when they try to fight hand-to-hand, the other guy's body gets really hot so they can't fight like that neither. Up on the Enterprise, everybody's consoles and seats get super hot too. What the hell? Just then, Airborne walks in with the 3rd old dude, Claymare, and tells them that they're the ones who heated up everybody's stuff, not just here, but in space too. Both Kirk and Core contact their ships to confirm this. Sulu is explaining about the hot chairs and buttons right as the main power goes out on the ship. Core says the same thing is happening with his people too. They're both pissed off and demand these Renaissance Wrinkle Farm inmates knock it off and let them fight to the death like civilized people. Airborne says he's projecting himself to Earth and the home planet of the Klingons and letting everybody know that this is how it is now. If you try to fight, you get the hot seat and your ship shuts down. Kirk and Core yell at each other about how legitimate their grievances are, and Kirk says that Airborne ought to be on the side of the Federation because the Klingons have killed 200 Organians. Airborne breaks it to him that that ain't actually the case. Kirk says, okay, maybe you guys are crazy powerful, but it's unfair that you're making us not fight and kill and destroy and stuff if we wanna. Airborne says, okay, you hear yourself talking right now, yeah? You see how you sound kind of crazy? You're pissed that we won't let you kill millions of innocent people and blow up houses and cities and planets and whatnot? That pisses you off, does it? Kirk kind of sobers up and realizes he's being just as bloodthirsty as he's accusing the Klingons of being, and even Spock is going, damn. Kirk concedes that war sucks, but that eventually they might have come to an understanding. Airborne says, let me blow your mind. Eventually, you guys are going to be best buddies. Kirk and Core scoff at this, but he goes on to say, until then, how about you guys haul ass out of here? You guys are so stupid and primitive, it's literally giving us a splitting headache that you're even here. See, we're actually energy-type people and just look like old dudes so you don't freak out. Then they turn into visual effects, and after 30 friggin' seconds, disappear, leaving Kirk, Spock, and Core a little confused, but resigned to the fact that the war has been canceled. In the epilogue, Kirk confesses to Spock that he's a little embarrassed that he was so pissed off that the Organians stopped the friggin' war. What kind of jerk gets pissed about that? And also, it's kind of humbling to find out that we're not the most powerful beings around. Spock ponders the Telosians, the Thasians, the Metrons, Baylock, the Shore Leave Planet Caretaker Guy, Gary Mitchell, and of course Trelane, and then says, we'll get there. Then we roll credits. Great stuff. So much great stuff in this episode. First, let's look at a few lines.
What would you say the odds are on our getting out of here?
Difficult to be precise, Captain. I should say approximately 7,824.7 to 1.
Difficult to be precise? 7,824 to 1?
7,824.7 to 1.
That's a pretty close approximation.
I endeavor to be accurate.
You do quite well.
They make this joke a few times in the series about Spock's ability to compute the odds of just about any outcome, and doing so to the 10th place being woefully inaccurate, but it never gets old to me.
It is true that in the future, you and the Klingons will become fast friends. You will work together.
Never.
Not a particularly brilliant or funny line on its own, but I do love that this does come true in The Next Generation and leads to a lot of great stories.
We have the right.
To wage war, Captain. To kill millions of innocent people. To destroy life on a planetary scale. Is that what you're defending?
Well, no one wants war.
Of course, this is the message of the episode boiled down to a single line. Now, we'll get into the message later, but the look of realization on Kirk's face at just what it was he was so mad that he was being deprived of is a really great bit of acting on Shatner's part. So with those out of the way, let's talk about the single greatest of the great stuff in this episode. This guy right here.
Where is your smile?
My what?
The stupid, idiotic smile everyone else seems to be wearing. So you welcome me. You also welcome me?
You're here. There's nothing I can do about it.
Good, honest hatred. Very refreshing. Always it is the brave ones who die. The soldiers. I hope you will continue to savor the sweetness of your life. You disgust me. Captain of the USS Enterprise. A starship commander. And his first officer? I had hoped to meet you in battle, but...
Obviously, the Organians aren't going to let us fight.
A shame, Captain. It would have been glorious.
John Colicos turns in a masterful portrayal of Commander Kor. He's not just a mustache-twirling villain, there are layers to this guy. And when he finds out Barona has been Captain Kirk this whole time, he's positively giddy about meeting this Federation captain he's obviously heard so much about. He's a warrior, but it's clear he hates being a military governor sitting behind a desk, and he don't like the fact that he has to execute the Organians when Kirk and Spock escape. One of writer Gene Kuhn's script notes says, "The Klingon commander is sitting at his desk, hands over his face. He is, at this moment, an unhappy man. The fact is, he does not relish butchering unarmed civilians. He's a soldier, and a good one. He sits quietly, brooding. There's no honor or glory in any of this, and it's really cheesing him off, and Johnny C. plays it beautifully. He gets angry at the Organian council that they stood by and let Barona do the fighting, and then again when they betray that he's actually Kirk. Seeing him almost on Kirk's side when it comes to the old dudes is just brilliant. I love everything about Gene Kuhn's writing of the character of Kor and John Colicos' portrayal of him. The toppest of notches here, and we'll talk more about this later. Oh, and one more thing.
Pure energy.
Yep, that's where that comes from. Judging from the demographics report on most of my videos, a good 90% of yous already know exactly what I'm talking about. For the rest of yous, look up 80s electronic band Information Society. Don't worry about which song, there's really only one. The Goof. Honestly, not a lot of big goof here. There's some little stuff like Spock setting the timer on the grenade to just 6 seconds and them hiding on the wrong side of the wall when the sizable explosion goes off. That was pretty goofy. Not to mention standing around and admiring their handiwork in the middle of the street where any Joey bag of Klingons could see them. Some other stuff too, the fact that Kirk and Spock really loudly discuss their plans to blow up the munitions dump while in the middle of a whole passel of Klingons. The fact that Spock says this society is a D- on, quote, Richter's scale of cultures, basically a primitive agrarian tech level, and yet somehow the council chamber has automatic doors. And what's more, nobody seems to think that's weird. But that stuff don't really bother me that much. There is one thing, though, that really bugs me in an otherwise great episode. And it's a problem that comes up in a lot of other stories, too. And that's when somebody has important information and just keeps it to themselves for, no reason at all. Shakespeare, Dickens, Three's Company, there are hundreds of examples, and this episode ain't no different. If Aelborn had just told Kirk why they weren't in any danger from the very beginning, we wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble, you know? Yeah, it's like Stupid Joe being stupid in Naked Time. If it don't happen, then we don't have an episode. But when you already know the deal with the Organians, it's really frustrating to watch them keep talking about how Kirk just doesn't understand their deal over and over, when they could just explain their friggin' deal, rather than just griping about how Kirk somehow ain't guessed that the Renaissance Bingo Club over here are actually super powerful energy beings just doing some cosplay. I wish there had been a better reason established about why they don't reveal themselves from the beginning than just, it never really came up, you know? Ruminations. As mentioned, this is our first look at the Klingons. Thank you, Gene Kuhn. Turns out, John Colicos was largely responsible for the look of the Klingons. Along with Star Trek's makeup artist Fred Phillips, who gave Colicos pretty much a free hand in the design, they designed the Klingons to evoke imagery of Genghis Khan and the brutal and conquering Mongol hordes. The foundation was a brown-green base to give it that otherworldly look, and then slapping some serious drama on those eyebrows and the goatees. They came up with a really iconic look that even today's Klingons still reference heavily. Unfortunately, Kor himself got most of the attention, and if you was playing a Klingon, the fewer lines you had, the more closely you resembled more of a coal miner than a Klingon. But you only got so much time for the makeup, you know? Now, Colicos was supposed to be back as Kor in the other two major Klingon episodes, Trouble with Tribbles and The Day of the Dove. But he was never available when he needed to be. And we won't see Colicos' Kor again until Deep Space Nine, though Kor the character does show up in the Star Trek animated series, but he's voiced by Jimmy Doohan. Now, as with so many original Star Trek episodes, this one is rather heavily influenced by the Vietnam conflict. Some episodes are more subtle about it, but not so much with this one. Now, I'm not going to get too into that. There are other YouTube channels that have done a much better job at that than I could. But this episode does bring up an interesting question. I get that the Organians are opposed to war and violence. I ain't a fan of either of them things myself. But would what the Organians do here to stop the war work? They've made it so the Federation and the Klingons are physically incapable of fighting. But that's done nothing to resolve their differences, you know? There's still this question of the disputed systems that Kirk mentions when he's explaining why they're fighting to Aelborn. Well, what happens there? Who gets to keep those systems? Whoever's there now? And what's to stop either side from just setting up bases and settlements right next door to the other guys? If they do it peacefully, how are you going to stop them? It would create this really weird and intense Cold War that might actually make things worse from a peaceful coexistence standpoint. Now, later on, it's going to be revealed that the events of this episode resulted in what will be known as the Organian Peace Treaty, implying that there are some terms and stipulations that might answer some of these questions. And we never see the Organian heat effect used ever again, which may mean that it was only employed just to force the hostilities to end long enough for the treaty to be established, and wasn't meant to enforce it in perpetuity. But as of right now, in this episode, none of that is apparent, and you're left with the feeling that this super being embargo on any hostility whatsoever is the whole deal. Now, if you go outside the series and movies to books and comics and whatnot, there are lots of explanations as to why the Organians seem to wash their hands of all of this by the time Trouble with Tribbles comes around, since there's a big bar fight between the Federation people and the Klingons in that. But some of them contradict each other, and we don't really get an explanation of it in the show itself. But I love the idea of the heat thing being a long-term thing and a whole department being set up at Starfleet and with the Klingons too, where they're testing the limitations and trying to figure out exploits and loopholes to get around the thing. I'd love to see a whole series that was just this passive-aggressive conflict, the I'm not touching you war, where like one of them sets up a base like 3 feet from the other guy's base and play loud K-pop, whether or not that stands for Korean or Klingon pop, hey, that's up to you. Stuff like that. And maybe you'd have some kind of twist where, like, after the feds have been jamming the Klingons' communications with a marathon of the Golden Girls, it turns out the Klingons really dig the show, and Estelle Getty gets a very posthumously awarded Hero of the Empire or something. Maybe it's just me, but I'd watch the hell out of that. So there you have it. Errand of Mercy. What a fantastic episode. What did you think of John Colicos as the very first Klingon commander, Core? Let me know down in the comments. If you dug the video, please do the like and subscribe thing. And if you want to help out the channel monetarily, go check out our Possum merch at adstudiosmerch.com. Consider becoming a channel member by clicking that join button down there. Or just hit the thanks button and throw a few quatloos in the tip jar. Maybe I can get a dirty water dog. Next time, Bones is strung out on drugs, Spock is Asian, and Kirk meets the love of his life, but Starcross don't even begin to cover it. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, to visit the city on the edge of forever. Until then, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, all right? Later.
Hey!